All right, let's talk about one of the most famous and, as it turns out, most misunderstood crimes in American history. It's a story that absolutely horrified the nation, but not just because of the murder itself. No, what really got people talking was what we were all told happened next. Or, more accurately, what didn't happen.
So picture this. It's the middle of the night, a cold morning in Kew Gardens, Queens. This was supposed to be a nice, safe, quiet neighborhood in New York City, the kind of place you'd feel comfortable walking home to. And that sense of peace is exactly what makes the events of that night so chilling.
You know, it's so easy for the victim to become just a name, a statistic. But Catherine Kitty Genovese was a real person, full of life. She was only 28, managed a local bar, and was known for just being this super energetic, popular person. She and her partner were building a life together, and Kitty had this big dream of opening her own restaurant. She had a whole future ahead of her. Now, this timeline is absolutely crucial because it reveals something that got totally lost in the media frenzy. The attack didn't happen all at once. It actually happened in two separate locations. Her attacker, Winston Moseley, assaults her on the street first, but then a neighbor yells and Moseley gets spooked and runs away. Kitty, badly hurt, manages to drag herself to the back of her building where nobody can see her. It was a full 10 minutes later that Moseley came back, hunted for her, and found her for the second final assault. So think about that. There was no single person who could have seen the whole 30-minute ordeal.
It took 2 weeks, but then this headline dropped in the New York Times. And boom. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about a tragic murder anymore. This headline launched a completely different narrative, one about shocking, cold-hearted apathy. It became way, way more famous than the crime itself. And that whole complicated story got boiled down to this one single number: 38. 38 witnesses. This number became shorthand, a symbol for everything wrong with modern city life. The idea was that dozens of good people watched a woman get murdered and just did nothing. It painted this picture of a society that was just decaying from the inside out. And so that became the story everyone believed. A terrifying tale of a city gripped by a crisis of apathy, where your neighbors would sooner close their blinds than lift a finger to help you. For decades, this version of events was taken as gospel. I mean, it was taught in psychology textbooks, cited in articles everywhere. But as journalists and historians dug deeper, it turned out the real story was a lot more complicated and, frankly, a lot less sensational. So let's break it down, myth versus reality. The number 38, it was a wild exaggeration, probably from a sloppy count of police interviews. In reality, maybe a handful of people had any real clue what was going on. And the idea that no one called the police, that's just plain false. People did try to help. And remember, no one saw the whole attack because it happened in two different spots. Most people just heard some screams and figured it was a bar fight or a couple arguing, things they heard all the time. One neighbor, Sophia Farrar, even ran down and held Kitty in her arms as she was dying. It was a universe away from the simple story of 38 people just watching. But here's the thing. Even though the story that sparked the outrage was flawed, it made psychologists ask a really important question about a very real, very powerful part of human behavior. So in a weird way, the myth led us to a profound truth. Psychologists John Darley and Bibb Latané were fascinated by the Genovese case, and they gave this phenomenon a name we all know today: the bystander effect. They set out to figure out scientifically why having more people around seems to paralyze us instead of making us more likely to help. And they landed on two major psychological reasons that keep us frozen. First, there's diffusion of responsibility. It's basically this someone else will handle it problem. The more people there are, the less any one person feels like it's their job to step up. And second, there's social influence. We're social creatures, right? We look around to see how others are reacting. If nobody else is panicking, we start to think, oh, maybe it's not a big deal after all. They figured out that helping isn't just one decision. It's actually a chain of decisions. First, you have to notice something is happening. Then you have to interpret it as an actual emergency. Then you have to feel personally responsible for doing something. After that, you have to know what to do. And finally, you have to make the choice to act. If the chain breaks at any one of those 5 steps, no help is given. Okay, so the story doesn't just end with a cool psychological theory. The public anger over what people thought had happened in Kew Gardens led to a very real, life-saving innovation that we all use today.
I mean, it's hard for us to even imagine this now, but in 1964, there was no simple way to call for help. You either had to know the exact 7-digit number for your local police station, or you had to dial the operator and pray they could connect you fast enough. The aftermath of this case made it painfully obvious how broken that system was.
And that's where 911 comes in. The massive public outcry over the Genovese case was a huge reason the 911 emergency system was created. In 1968, AT&T rolled out the 3-digit number nationwide. They chose 911 because it was simple, easy to remember, and hadn't been used for anything else. This system, literally born from this tragedy, has saved countless lives.
So, the case of Kitty Genovese, a story built on a myth, leaves us with a very real and very personal question. Knowing what we know now about the bystander effect, the question isn't just, would you act? It's, what will you do to make sure you're the one who breaks that chain of inaction, the one who picks up the phone and makes the call?